Alright, welcome everybody to me making a video again for the first time in goddamn forever. So, as you can see on the screen here, it's going to be a little bit of a low effort content tier list video, which this is to celebrate me reading 50 manga in my life now. So we're going to be ranking every single one of them, even though there's 51 now because I finished JoJo Part 2 before I made this. So, as you can see, tiers, we got top tier is Goated, second tier Kino, the third tier is Raw, fourth tier is Mid, fifth tier is Trash. The reason that, there's more good tiers than anything is because I don't read a lot of bad manga, and I don't finish a lot of bad manga. So, everything in here is something that I have either completed or caught up with as it's still currently going. There's also a couple one-shots in here that I don't know if they would be counted normally, but screw you, I'm doing it. So we're probably just going to go largely in alphabetical order for this one. So the first one here is A Silent Voice. I'm not sure where to put this, just because when I first read it, it was definitely one of my favorite manga, but I feel like as more time has gone on since I read it, my feelings on it are very, I don't think it really hits as hard in retrospect. I don't think the romance is all that particularly, well done or interesting. But I still do think it's very, very good. So I think I'm gonna stick this in Raw. Next one is Act Age. Now, I'll just be blatantly honest here. Act Age would have been pretty easily firmly in Goated. But because of everything that happened and it getting canceled, I feel like I can't even put it in Goated because there's no ending to the series. So I'm just going to put it in Kino. I did write a script for a video talking about the whole Act Age situation to sort of help me process it a little bit better, but I doubt I'll ever actually make that into a video. So, that's really all I have to say about it. Fuck the writer, support the artist. Next one is Ashita no Joe, and Ashita no Joe is one of my favorite things ever made. So that's going straight into Goated. I think it's probably my favorite sports series off the top of my head, yeah. And that shit made me cry. That shit made me cry real hard. So yeah, big fan of Ashita no Joe. Next up is Attack on Titan, and Attack on Titan's a weird one for me just because I feel like it's so up and down all the time. I can never really gauge how much I like it because at some points I think, wow, this is amazing, and then at some other points I'm like, wow, I'm so bored that I want to die. So I'm feeling mid for now, but I might move it up to Raw. Yeah, that seems good for now. The next one up is Bakuman, and God, I love Bakuman a lot. The only problem that I have with Bakuman is the fans that read it and think that they know the ins and outs of how Shonen Jump works to a T. So, Bakuman, I'm gonna put it in Kino. It's a really, really enjoyable series and is definitely the best work from those two. Along with just having insanely good artwork, really well-written characters and stuff. I'm a big fan of it. Beast Children. Now, this is one that I feel like could have been something, outstanding if it was given more time in Jump. And seeing as how now there is no sports series in Jump at all, I really, really wish that they didn't cancel Beast Children. But in its 20 something, I don't even know if it got 20 chapters. I don't remember exactly how long it was. But in its run, I feel like it can't be anything above just mid. But it'll be on the lower end of mid. I don't know if I'm going to order these within the tiers, but whatever. B-Stars. I promise you I'm not a furry, but B-Stars is goated. B-Stars is one of the best things I've ever read. I think, like, we're, like, right at the end of the series, too. There's not a lot left. Most likely, at least. And it's just been, like, a 10 out of 10 series the entire way through. I highly recommend anybody read it. It being, like, anthropomorphic animals can be a little off-putting, I get that, but give it a try if you haven't. I don't know how good the anime is, so I would recommend the manga wholeheartedly. Black Clover... Black Clover, I feel like, is just raw in its definition. Everything about Black Clover just screams the word raw at all times. It's so sick. It's so cool. I love it. Black Clover is awesome. I feel like Black Clover gets a pretty bad, like, rep from its anime, because not even necessarily later parts of the anime, but very early on, it was a rough adaptation, and I feel like a lot of people sort of, like, turned on it because of that. But I would highly recommend reading Black Clover to literally anybody. It is such a fun read, and it's also very quick to read through. Kind of reminds me of, like, Bleach's pacing, in that it's just, like, you can read, like, 100 chapters in a day and be like, wait, what? When did that happen? When did I do that? Blaster Knuckle. This is one that not a lot of people probably know about. Basically, I want to say it's like a late 70s manga, maybe early 80s, something like that. I should probably look that up. But, basically, it's about a guy who, I want to say he hunts down, like, racist vampires in America or something. It's been a long time since I've read it. But, yeah, it's just, like, it's like 20-something chapters. It's really short, and it's just really cool. And in concept, it's just funny to me. So that'll go in mid. It's not great. It's nothing really special, but it's an entertaining time. Bleach. Bleach is goated. Bleach is probably here in goated. Probably, yeah. Bleach is, like, one of the best things that I've ever read. And Bleach definitely gets a really, really bad reputation. It's so good, and I feel like a lot of people will just look at it and don't actually really, like, think about the things that are happening, and they just kind of complain about, like, little things that really aren't, like, a big deal, like Hisagi's Bankai, stuff like that. But yeah, Bleach in general is, like, one of my favorite series. I think that it is exceptionally done. I think that Tite Kubo is one of the best artists I've ever seen. I think his character designs are literally, like, out of this world quality. And then the writing in general is just very good. There's a lot of interesting symbolism and stuff in Bleach. I would highly recommend anybody give it another try if they didn't like it, you know, a while ago. Go into it with an open mind. Don't go into it with the preconceived notion that, like, everything after Soul Society is bad. Just don't be super eye patch wolf with his Bleach takes, please. It hurts. It hurts a lot. I'll never forgive him for that video. It hurts. Boku no Hero. This one, I'm gonna put in Kino. Boku no Hero is a series that I have not necessarily hated on, but thought was just, like, remarkably average for a long time. But the more that I've been getting into it recently, the more I'm like, this shit is very good. Like, it's really fucking good. And I highly recommend, if you're one of, like, 5 people out there that doesn't know what it is, read it. Not necessarily even watch the anime, because the anime is a good adaptation, but I still don't think it hits what the manga does with its artwork. So, big recommend the read on that one. Next up is Bokurano. Bokurano is depressing as all hell. The concept is that a bunch of kids have to pilot a mech and save the world, except a lot of dying happens. It's very, very depressing series to read. I think I'll put it in raw. I enjoyed reading it, and I think it's a well-written story, but it does have some weird sort of like messaging, I guess, to it. And it being overly depressing is, it's not an easy read for any, under any circumstances, I would say. Next up is Burn the Witch, and this is just the one-shot. I am recording this like a day after the first chapter came out, and I still have not read it, and I really should, because Kubo is a god. But just based on the one-shot, it is going in mid. It was an enjoyable one-shot, and I actually really thought it was like one of the better one-shots that I've ever read. But at the same time, it's just a one-shot. There's not a lot to it. And it's kind of hard to say that a one-shot is better than a lot of fully fledged series. Like, the only things that I have it above here are things that are like 20 chapters long, while everything else is a fully fledged series. That's just kind of how one-shots go. That's kind of why it's a little awkward to include them on this list, but whatever, fuck you, fight me. Claymore, I'm going to put Claymore at the bottom of Raw, just because Claymore is so sick. It's not like an insanely well-written story or anything. It's like pretty good. The characters are okay, but everything about it is just so cool. And I just really enjoyed reading it. The fights are really fun to read in Claymore, which makes me kind of wish that it had a good anime adaptation, but, can't have everything. Next up is Death Note, and as I said earlier, Bakuman is definitely the best of these people's work. So Death Note will go in mid. I think it is it's a fun, enjoyable series at times, but it's very wordy, and I don't think that anything in it is like crazy well written at all. The artwork is very sick though. So, I'll give Death Note some of the credit that it deserves. It's good, but it doesn't, fully do anything for me. So it just kind of falls into mid. Still not bad, though. Still something I could recommend people read. Demon's Plan is another one of these Jump series that only went, 14 chapters. And it kind of sucks that it got cut off, just because it was actually getting better right towards the end of its run. But it only went 14 chapters, and most of that 14 chapters was pretty bad, so it falls into the trash tier. Devilman is okay. That's most of what I have to say about Devilman. It's very, very influential, and, big thank you for that. But as a series on its own, I think that it is pretty mid. But hey. It's better than Devilman Crybaby. I will die on that hill. Devilman Crybaby is not good. D. Grayman, I'm going to put in Raw. D. Grayman is such a sick series. It's really, really fun to read. The thing that sucks the most about it is that it is now a quarterly manga as opposed to weekly. So instead of 12-ish chapters every 3 months, you get one, and it's really hard to even remember what happened in the last one 3 months later, so that it kind of hurts my enjoyment of D. Grayman a bit. Hopefully it'll eventually reach its end, but I don't have high hopes for that. So yeah, what's there of D. Grayman is very, very good, and there's a lot of really well written stuff in it, a lot of great artwork. But the pain of quarterly hell really gets me. Dr. Stone is probably the top of mid. I think that there is some very good stuff in Dr. Stone, but there's also a lot that just kind of bores me. I will give a lot of credit to Boichi's artwork because it is insanely good. Even if people like to complain about Boichi's female characters, they look fine. Shut up. This is a 3 or 4 chapter gag thing about a guy being reincarnated as Yamcha. and it existed and wasn't very funny, so it goes in trash. I haven't even read Dragon Ball, but like this one thing just is not entertaining really at all. It's an okay concept. It doesn't do much for me. Full Metal Alchemist. Now, am I going to get murdered if I say bad things about Full Metal Alchemist? The answer is probably yes. I'm gonna put it in raw. Full Metal Alchemist is a series that originally, like, the Brotherhood was my favorite anime for a long time. And it is the favorite anime of, like, so many people. And I get why. But as time has gone on, it just doesn't do nearly as much for me as it did before. I feel like Brotherhood / the manga is just, like, it's a very, like, vanilla top anime sort of thing, where it's like it doesn't go too outside of the box. It doesn't do anything too interesting or unique, really. So it just kind of, like, I acknowledge that it's very good for what it is, but it doesn't do the kind of things that I would like to see more of. So it kind of just falls more in the middle of, like, my good things. Next up is a one-shot that is called, I believe the exact name is, I'm the main character of a harem manga, but I'm gay, so every day is hell for me. And it was funny. It was actually pretty funny. It'll go in the mid-tier for a one-shot. It was an entertaining one. It didn't overplay the joke because it didn't have time to overplay the joke. So it does it's very good. Very good for a one-shot. Next up is Haikyuu. This series ended like a couple weeks ago, and I cried, and it was awesome. And I think I'm gonna put it at the top of Kino. I might, when I eventually do reread Haikyuu or watch certain parts of the anime again, because I want to see how it adapts later stuff, it might go up, because Haikyuu was a very, very, very enjoyable. And it's also a fairly quick read, honestly. It's not overly wordy. The matches are just, like, very quick to get through and very fun. But, yeah, Haikyuu in general, just great. Artwork is, like, out of this world quality. For a while, I didn't really like the Haikyuu artwork, just because everything looked a little off compared to, like, the quote-unquote cleaner-looking anime. But I think that in retrospect, I was very wrong. The art is great and is, like, part of the reason why I love it so much. It conveys all the hype of the series so well. So yeah, that's where Haikyuu is going to end up, at the top of Kino. Could move up to Goated on more reflection and a reread, though. Next up is Hunter x Hunter. Full disclosure, have not read the full manga for Hunter x Hunter. I've read the Hunter exam and everything after where the anime ends. So I don't know if you'd really want to count my feelings on the manga, since a lot of it is based on the anime still. But it'll go in raw. Probably like here. I don't know. I need to read the whole thing to really give full thoughts on the manga, so I'll just leave it at that. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 Phantom Blood is an okay manga. Part 1 is largely pretty boring. I don't think the fights are anything good at all. I think basically the entire enjoyment of Part 1 comes down to Dio being a semi-entertaining villain, and Speedwagon and Zappelli being entertaining characters. I don't even really like Jonathan at all. But yeah, Part 1 is, like, okay. I've only read the first two parts, but I kind of expect Part 1 to be the least good out of all of them. So, on to Battle Tendency, which I think is a large step up. I think that the fights in Battle Tendency are actually very entertaining. I think that Joseph is a lot better than Jonathan. I think that Caesar is one of the better characters, like, in the series. I think, yeah, basically everything about part 2, I think, is just, it's like, it's similar to part 1, but it's like a step or two up from it at all times. I don't think there is anything better in part 1 than there is something in part 2. So it still falls in mid, but it's like a much higher level than part 1 is. Jujutsu Kaisen is a very cool manga that I read and really enjoyed reading, but then after reading it, I genuinely could not, like, tell you a single thing about what happened in the series at all. I read it and I absorbed nothing. I don't remember practically anything of, like, the themes or anything like that at all. So while it's super cool, I think I have to stick it at the top of mid. I should reread it, and I probably will at some point. But so far, it's just kind of being carried by it being just so cool for me. Next up is Keijo, and I am going to get laughed out of the building for this one. I read Keijo as my 50th manga, and that shit is going at the top of Raw. Keijo is, like, it's definitely the haha funny girls, boobs, and butts and shit like that. And that's what a lot of people see it as. But I honestly think that it's a well-written series underneath all that shit. As well as just being, like, the coolest thing ever. Because, like, there's so many references in it that I really like. And they're used in cool ways. Like, the fucking Gates of Babylon being referenced is so sick. It was, like, the coolest thing ever. And I loved it. Keijo in general is just such a cool series that also has some really well-written characters. A lot of fun, like, themes work in it. A lot of the matches are very entertaining. So yeah, Keijo, top of Raw. Don't argue with me, I'm right. Next up is Kimetsu no Yaiba. And I hope that no fans of this series happen to find this video, because I'm gonna stick it, like, right here, probably. Actually, I don't even know about that. I think, like, right there. Kimetsu no Yaiba was a decently fun read. I enjoyed parts of it a bit. There are some very good arcs in it. But largely, I think that it's just like a okay series. I don't really get a lot of the hype for it. I guess a lot of the hype for it does come from the anime adaptation, which I watched an episode of and dropped to go read the manga. But overall, it's okay. I like Tanjiro quite a bit, even if he's kind of just a relatively generic character. But yeah, I think a lot of the hype for it kind of diminishes my feelings on it, because I was really excited to read it, and everybody was, like, freaking out about how great it was. And then I read it, and I was like, that was very underwhelming. So yeah, those are kind of my loose feelings on Kimetsu no Yaiba. Next up is Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, and this is going directly into GOATed. I absolutely love this series. It's so good. And I don't really have, like, a ton to say about it in this video, because I feel like I really want to make a full video on it. So I'll probably just leave it at that. Highly recommend reading it. The title is amazing. Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, greatest title of all time. But, you know, go read it. Highly recommend. There's no anime, so you only have one choice, and that's read it. Madoka Magica manga is mid as fuck. It's mid as fuck. it is just a infinitely inferior version of the anime. There's nothing really about it that makes it stand out at all. Just watch the anime. I like the anime a lot. It's way better. Just do that. Magi. Whew. Magi's an interesting one. I really enjoyed reading it. And it's sort of like there are parts of it that I don't really like. The final arc of Magi is definitely not something that I enjoyed nearly as much as the stuff that came like right before it. And I usually really hate the oh it got bad in blank arc for any series. But if people like say that Magi's final arc is bad, I'm really not gonna argue against it. I don't like it. But the rest of the series is like great. There are some awesome fights. A lot of the arcs are really well written. I think it goes in Raw. Probably about there. Screw it. Mirai Nikki is the worst piece of media I have ever experienced. I would be tempted to make a whole tier just for it, but I honestly don't care enough to give it that kind of attention. I hate this series with every fiber of my being. I've watched the anime subbed, I've watched the anime dubbed, and I've read the manga, and they are all 1 out of 10s. They're all terrible. I have nothing more to say on this topic at this time. I might make a video expressing my hatred for it, but probably not, because I don't want to waste that energy. Mob Psycho 100 is goated. I don't think anybody who has really like read and dove into the characters and the writing of this series will argue with me otherwise. It is one of like the best written things I've ever read. One is a character writing genius. I love that man so much. He's so good at writing characters. The only downside to it as a manga is that one's artwork can be questionable at times. But even then, I think that his artwork has a lot of charm to it. So I don't even think that the art is a detriment to the series. But yeah, if you want to watch the anime, I would also highly recommend that. Would highly recommend reading the manga as well. Next one up is My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness. I have not read this in quite some time. I remember enjoying reading it quite a bit, but as it stands now, I'll probably throw it in mid, right there. I've heard that the sequel to it is a lot better, so I really got to get around to like rereading this and then just reading the sequel. Naruto. God, I really want to put it there, but I think I'm just gonna have to slot Naruto in at the top of Kino. Naruto is one of those series like Bleach that gets a insanely bad rep for really no like justifiable reason, because a lot of the complaints that people have about Naruto are just like very stupid complaints largely, and that sounds harsh to just call somebody's like criticisms of a series stupid, but damn dude, some of the things that people say about Naruto hurt me physically. It's an incredibly well written series, and the only real issue that I have with it is that I think some of the stuff that they did during the war arc is kind of dumb. Not even from like a character writing or anything like that perspective, because I think all that is very, very good. I think that like basically like Hashirama cells and stuff like that are just like kind of stupid, and I don't really care about them. So it lands at the top of Kino. Doesn't quite make it to Goated. Could make it to Goated if I ever reread Naruto, which I probably will at some point. But yeah, that's where it'll sit for now. Nisekoi, on the other hand, is Mega Kino Raw Swag Goated. Nisekoi is like... It's like arguably my favorite manga. It's so good. I don't understand how people like read this series and just like outright call it bad. Because like I've heard so many stupid complaints. Like people say that like so much of Nisekoi is filler. And I'm like, guys, it's a slice of life series. Why are you calling any of it filler? It's the manga. Why are you calling any of it filler? That's not how that works. But yeah, Nisekoi is a incredibly well-written harem manga where a lot of the hate actually comes from shipping wars, which if you read the first chapter of Nisekoi, you should know... you should know which girl is going to win. So shipping anybody but those two together was a recipe for disaster. And yeah, Nisekoi is just like one of the most fun things that I've ever experienced. I loved reading every second of it. It's such a funny series. Highly recommend reading it. Yeah, that's really all I got. I should talk more about Nisekoi at all times. Noragami is probably like here-ish. Noragami's a really good manga. I really enjoyed it a lot. I feel like I'm just kind of repeating the same things in a lot of spots. But Noragami specifically, there are some down points. I don't love any of the characters all that much. But I think that there are some really well-written and interesting arcs to it. I think that some of the the rules with how the gods have to function and all that stuff has always been very interesting to me. So I do like Noragami quite a bit. It's not like a favorite, but would highly recommend. One Piece, the best. One Piece is my favorite piece of media ever created. I'm not going to even talk about it beyond that because I don't feel the need to justify saying that One Piece is the best. One Punch Man will go in Goated as well, like right up there with Mob Psycho. The One Punch Man manga is both incredibly well written because one is a character writing god and also is one of the best looking manga, probably the best looking manga that I've ever read. Miura is, it's Murata. Sorry, Miura is the Berserk author. Murata is probably the best artist that I can think of off the top of my head. I think he's better than Miura's art, but whatever. One Punch Man is just a constant train of hype that also does a really good job of making you relate to characters that should realistically have zero relatability. So One Punch Man makes it into Goated. Parasite the manga is pretty mid. I enjoy it for what it is, and it's also been a long time since I've read it, but it doesn't really stand out all that much. Nothing in it is particularly great. So it kind of it falls into mid. Sorry, I've been talking for a long time now. Yeah, it just falls into mid. It's an enjoyable series for what it is, but it's nothing particularly special. Siren is also pretty mid. Siren's interesting in some ways, just because there's a fan base for it that still wants to see it animated this many years after it finished its run and jump. My biggest issue with Siren is that I don't like the last arc of the series. I feel like it all felt really rushed to me. And I'm not going to say that they rushed it to an ending or anything, but it if somebody were to say that, I wouldn't necessarily make an argument against it, because in some ways it does feel kind of like that. But overall, it's a fun read. There's some cool moments. None of the characters really stand out all that much. So it just kind of falls in mid. I hate to do this to my boy Kishimoto, but Samurai 8 is trash. It's such a disappointing series, because there are flashes of greatness in it. There, the moments with Hachimaru and his dad, and Hachimaru and, I want to say her name is An, or Anna, or whatever, are really, really well written, because Kishimoto, the thing that he does best in his writing is character interactions and the bonds between characters, which is almost oh hey, that's the whole point of what Naruto was, so it's awesome. But god, a lot of the stuff in Samurai 8 was just bad, man, and it's so disappointing to see that out of Kishimoto when I know he can do better, and I hope he comes back and does better in the future. But for now, Samurai 8's just a disappointment. It hurts. It hurts to say. Slam Dunk is Kino. I actually didn't really like all that much of Slam Dunk. I thought it was a solid 7 out of 10 manga for the majority of the run. Then the second to last game happened, and I was like, that was actually a really good game. That was a 9 out of 10 game in this manga. And then the last game happened, and I'm like, this might be the greatest arc of anything I've ever read. So yeah, Slam Dunk is a series that gets hard carried by its last game. It's so insanely good. Oh, I love it so much. But the rest of the series didn't really do a lot for me on a first read. Maybe on a reread after experiencing like the last two games, everything will hit a little bit harder for me. But for just the first read, it falls in Kino. Spirit Circle is by the same author that did Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, and I think that it is pretty mid. It doesn't have the same like level of things that I like in Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. I don't really like the characters all that much. It's sorry about the yawning yacht. It is an interesting gimmick at least, and I think that it's done decently for the most part. But once they start trying to like explain how the gimmick actually works and like how they can do these things in the series, it really lost me. Honestly, I don't think it's something that needed to be explained. So yeah, that was a little bit of a disappointing thing. But overall, I think that it's largely good. I just don't really like the last volume or so of it. I would recommend giving it a try because I know a lot of people like it more than Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, or like it more than his other work, which would be like Sengoku Yoko. But for me, I don't really like it all that much. The Promised Neverland is also one of those series. A lot of people like it a lot. I really liked the first arc of it, but after that, it kind of just lost me a little bit. And like as time went on, it kept losing me more and more. A lot of the characters don't really do anything for me. Actually, like none of the characters do anything for me for the most part. Also, really didn't like the last arc at all. Thought it was very boring. So yeah, that's where that is. Tokyo Ghoul. Ah, man, this talked to me like 2 years ago, and this goes and goated, but here we are. Probably like here. I think Tokyo Ghoul is pretty good. It's kind. I tried to reread it, and like, there's nothing like inherently wrong with it, but just the like raw fucking teenage angst and edge that radiates off of this series, man, it makes it hard to go back and read it. It really does. Yeah, that's really all I got for Tokyo Ghoul. I don't really have much beyond that. Uzumaki is cool. Uzumaki's really cool. That's the only Junji Ito thing that I've ever experienced, and I read it, and I was like, this is like sick. The art in it's also very, very good, which is something that I am aware about Junji Ito. His artwork is crazy good. I'm not really looking forward to the anime adaptation, though, just because the last time they tried to adapt some Junji Ito stuff, it was not good. Vinland Saga, oh my god. I gotta breathe more. Vinland Saga is pretty Kino. I'd say probably like here. Full disclosure, I am pretty far behind on Vinland Saga now, actually. It's been like a while since I've read any of the new chapters. But for the most part, I really enjoyed reading Vinland Saga. I think that the first arc is a interestingly told revenge story. Because, and then, you know, the ending to it is a really interesting twist on the whole thing. Then Farmland Saga happened, and I'm like, wow, damn, this is way better. They really improved this series. And beyond that, it's been very good. I don't really have like a ton to say on it, just because it's been a long time since I've read any of it. But I am a big fan of Vinland Saga. Your Lie in April is a series that is like pretty, I'd say pretty polarizing, honestly. I think that it does some things pretty well. I think the main character, whose name I can't even remember, was pretty interesting for the most part. The part about it that doesn't click with me is that I didn't ever really end up liking the main girl at all. I thought she was just kind of okay, and maybe that's partially because I already knew the outcome of that whole thing when I went into it. But yeah, I don't know. It never really connected with me on like that, on like a super high level because of her not being a character that I particularly care for at any point in time. So yeah, that's sort of where my feelings on Your Lie in April fall. And the last one is trash. The Your Name manga is a waste of time. It is a waste of existence. It should not exist in any capacity. I want it to die. Make it go away, please. Dear God. Yeah, it's a waste. Just watch the movie. I like the movie. I think it's like a 7 out of 10 movie. The manga is like a 2 out of 10 because it takes anything good in the movie and distills it into nothing and makes it bad. And the artwork is also just not good at all. It's a very disappointing manga. So that's gonna do it. This is a very long video, very long-winded. But if anybody in the comments wants to, talk about any of this stuff, I'll be happy to talk about literally any of these series with you in the comments. If there's any of these series that you think I should make a full video on, talking about them specifically, let me know in the comments yet again. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe. I want to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the year, just because, big number make self-esteem go up. So yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in whatever the hell I make next. I don't know, man. I don't know. I gotta get like a schedule going here or something. Anyway, see you guys later.